And Brian had wanted to comment a little bit on what was going on there with Condoleezza Rice and Russia and the Poland.
Well, earlier this week on Monday, Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice sharply criticized Russia for relying on its military power to accomplish its goals. Think about that. But this is precisely what the United States has been doing for, the past 200 years, relying on its military to accomplish its political goals. And here, our Secretary of State is telling Russia, well, you shouldn't rely on your military to accomplish its goals, while invading Georgia, defending the Ossetians against the invading Georgians. I mean, this, like I told Farron earlier, could quite possibly be the most hypocritical statement of the entire year.
And this kind of arrogance that we interject around the world is why world opinion of the United States is so low. We stick our nose in everyone's business. We're arrogant, do what we say, not what we do. And here, Moscow has slammed the U.S. for its Iran delusion. Russia has strongly reacted to a U.S.-Poland deal to station the components of a missile defense shield on European country soil. This past Wednesday, the Russian Foreign Ministry said that the planned missile shield in Poland was aimed at weakening Russia, describing it as part of a U.S. effort to change the strategic balance of power in its favor. The statement also dismisses U.S. claims of a missile threat from Iran as imaginary. We're convinced the U.S. missiles will target the Russian strategic arsenals, the ministry added. Russia's envoy to NATO also said Washington's decision to deploy missile interceptors to Poland revealed the patently anti-Russian U.S. plan to build a strategic missile shield. Russia's response will be a technologically simple and highly effective. They said U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice signed the agreement in Warsaw on Wednesday to deploy 10 U.S. missile interceptors in Poland. The U.S. also agreed to provide Poland with Patriot missiles to protect the country against a possible attack by Russia. Political pundits say that the apparent fast-tracking of the deal appears to be a return to Cold War era.
And again, if you look at this from the Russian perspective, here the Russians have, and I'm guessing, say 10,000 ICBM missiles capable of hitting the United States versus the supposed threat here that we're defending ourselves against, Iran, which is probably, say, a decade from even developing a nuclear weapon. That's not even giving it a delivery method such as a missile. So who, in the eyes of the United States, would be a bigger threat here? The Russians with their 10,000 ICBMs aimed at us, or Iran?
That if they did have one and they were able to launch it, what would happen? They would be completely annihilated. It worked before,
It'd be suicide.
It'd be suicide, and if there's anyone to fear here, it probably is Russia, because they have a very low opinion of the United States with what we've been gallivanting around the world doing here in recent years. And I wanted to report this story. There's been a lot of misleading information reported in the last couple of weeks regarding the conflict between Russia and Georgia. Georgia attacked Ossetia, and Russia intervened, as Brian said. But what I wanted to discuss is our role that America is playing in the world in regards to threatening Iran. And Russia said our concerns with the nuclear bomb was imaginary, and the U.S. going forward with a defense shield in Poland that Russia has adamantly opposed. I'm not pushing one side or the other. I would like to hear from the public to comment when we go to the phones. How do you view what our government is doing and has done in recent years in terms of our foreign policy? And while we've got a few minutes here, we're having a little bit of technical difficulty. I'd like to ask Brian. We had discussed what would the NIST interview contain. What would they come up with? And I myself was surprised that they tried to lay that back off just on fire.
Yeah, there was really nothing new here. It was just the same old song and dance, just regurgitated outward, just over and over. And
we can't stress it enough. This has went practically totally unreported. I've not seen it on CNN or Fox that this has taken place. They've wiped the World Trade Center 7 question off the off of the front page. Now it's history, just like the anthrax. Luckily, within 6 weeks, we're done with the anthrax investigation and World Trade Center 7. Yourself, Brian, being an activist, do you foresee the people that question this accepting any of this, or will the questions just keep going?
They'll just keep going. I mean, this was really a slap in the face to all the people out there that actually, look at things like facts.
We're going to go to a break, and we'll come back here in just a few minutes. To begin, just tell us a little bit about yourself, and when did you begin to question the official story of 9/11?
Well, my background is one of a lot of academic training, unsurprisingly. I earned my undergraduate degree in philosophy at Princeton. I took a commission in the Marine Corps and served 4 years as an artillery officer, a series commander, and a regimental administrative officer. I did my graduate work then in the history and the philosophy of science at Indiana University and taught for 35 years, doing a great deal of research and publishing over 2,000 books.
Many of our listeners are probably unaware that a third building collapsed on September 11th in less than 10 seconds. World Trade Center 520 straight down. Contend this is proof of prior knowledge and defies all logic with regards to the government's version of events. Can you tell us of World Trade Center 7 and your beliefs on this incredible unreported piece of the story?
Yes, absolutely. There are many fascinating aspects about Building 7. It was an extremely well-constructed building. In my opinion, it may be one of the most robust buildings ever erected in the history of structural engineering, because it was put up over 2 enormous electrical generators providing electricity to lower Manhattan. Even in the case of the Twin Towers, the principal support beams were, although as much as 4 or 5 inches thick, were hollowed out at the center. In the case of Building 7, however, they were solid beams. It was a 47-story building, 20 or 30 floors of which were purchased by Solomon Brothers, and because they weren't happy with the design, they actually reconstructed a building inside the building. It was that solid in its construction. Now, 2 or 3 interesting events occurred before the Building 7 collapsed at 5:20 in the afternoon in about 6.5 seconds, which took the form of a classic controlled demolition. You get explosions at the base working their way up, then you see the whole building collapse. All the floors are moving at the same time. You see this little indentation from the left of the building in most of the films, showing a main support column has been blown out slightly early, so that if the building is going to tend to collapse one way or another, it'll tend to collapse into itself, into its own foundation. Around late that afternoon, Larry Silverstein, who owned the World Trade Center, had a conversation with someone he referred to as the fire commander, but there's a verbal pause when he describes this, and it was recorded by public broadcasting, so we have videotape of it, saying that there's been so much death and destruction, perhaps the best thing to do is to pull the building. And he says they made the decision to pull, and we watched it come down. Now, talking about pulling the building is a phrase that's used in construction for bringing a building down by a controlled demolition.